So, hey everyone, I hope you've all been doing well. It's been a little different from my usual benchmark-only videos. But today, I wanted to try something new. You might be wondering how I actually got this PC, what the specs are, and what the real price ended up being. So let's start from the beginning. I found this system on Facebook Marketplace. It was originally listed for 10,000 rupees, which is roughly 120 US dollars. Now obviously, I wasn't paying full price, so I did what every responsible adult does. I negotiated. And by negotiated, I mean I sent him the most polite message imaginable. After a bit of back and forth, he actually agreed. So I got the whole system for 9,000 rupees, which converts to about $110, including shipping. And honestly, that's not bad at all. Now at first glance, this actually didn't look too bad. The i3-9100 isn't exactly a powerhouse, but for basic gaming and general use, it's not completely useless either. It's a 4-core, 4-thread CPU, which basically means multitasking isn't its favorite hobby. Still, for the price I paid, 9,000 rupees, or about $110, I wasn't expecting a threadripper. The motherboard, though, was clearly from an Office pre-built system. It's a B365M Acer board, with a BIOS that feels like it hasn't been updated since Windows 7 was exciting. No fancy options, no overclocking, just the basics. The power supply was a Cooler Master Thunder 450 watts, which to be fair, isn't terrible, but it's also not something I'd trust with a high-end GPU without being slightly nervous. It only have two 4GB sticks of 2400 MHz RAM, which let's be honest, is not sufficient in 2026. But if you are willing to sacrifice using multiple apps at the same time, or talking with your online friends whom you have never met, 8 gigs is still surprisingly enough for just gaming. Storage was interesting. A 128GB consistent SATA SSD, which is just enough space for Windows, and maybe one modern game if you uninstall everything else in your life. And then there's the 1TB DDUD Blue hard drive, which is actually decent for mass storage. So overall, this system wasn't amazing, but for 9,000 rupees, around $110, it was a solid base to build on. In the meantime, I managed to find an ASUS H310M motherboard, which actually came inside a generic metal PC cabinet, along with an FSP 300-watt 80+ gold power supply. After a bit of bargaining, I got the whole thing for 3,500 rupees, which is roughly 45 US dollars, and that was already a much better base than the Acer Office board. But I wasn't done yet. I also found a pretty solid deal on an i3-9350KF. It was listed for 2,800 rupees, but after negotiating a little, I got it for 2,600 rupees, which is about $30 to $32 including shipping. At this point, things were starting to get interesting, so once all the parts arrived, I pulled everything apart. The original i3-9100 came out, and the 9350KF went in. The Acer motherboard was replaced with the ASUS H310M inside the main chassis, and instead of letting the old parts sit around, I moved the Acer motherboard and the i3-9100 into the generic cabinet, paired it with the FSP unit, and turned it into a complete working system. And then I sold that system for 5,500 rupees, which is around 65 US dollars. But of course, a 4-core CPU upgrade alone doesn't magically turn this into a gaming machine. What really matters is the GPU. Now this was the part I was most excited about, because this single component would decide whether this build was just another Office PC or something actually worth talking about. After searching around for a while, I finally found a deal. And no, it's not a 3090. It's not some ridiculous high-end monster. It's just a GTX 1660 Super. Yeah, anticlimactic? Maybe. But for 8,000 rupees, which is roughly 100 US dollars including shipping, that's actually a very solid deal. When it arrived from the outside, it looked perfectly fine, No obvious damage, no broken fans, no suspicious smells, but the temperatures were a little higher than I liked, so naturally, I opened it up to check the thermal paste, and what I found was impressive. There was so much thermal paste on that GPU, it looked like the previous owner believed in applying it with emotional commitment. Clearly, he likes putting very generous amounts of his white paste on very hot GPUs. Anyway, I cleaned everything properly, applied my own thermal paste, carefully reassembled it, and the result? Absolutely nothing. Temperatures didn't improve at all. So yes, I basically wasted my time. But there's another solution, something magical, something free. Undervolting. I dropped the voltage down to 875 millivolts, while keeping the clock speed at 1860 megahertz, which is a stock frequency. Originally, it was running at around 1020 millivolts, and just by lowering the voltage significantly, the temperatures became much more reasonable. No performance loss, lower heat, much better behavior. Now, there was one more issue. The 9350KF does not come with a stock cooler, and even if it did, there is no way that tiny cooler from the original system was going to handle it properly. I ordered a Thermalright Assassin X 120 RSE from Amazon. I paid 1,950 rupees for it, which is about $23 US, but when the package arrived, I noticed something interesting. Instead of the Assassin X, I received the Assassin Spirit Evio X ARGB, which is actually a slightly better model, and it comes with ARGB. So somehow, I ordered a normal air cooler and got a free upgrade. I'm not complaining. Now, before jumping into gaming benchmarks, let's talk about the final cost of this entire build. The original system was 9,000 rupees. The ASUS motherboard combo was 3,500 rupees. The i39350KF was 2,600 rupees. The cooler was 1,950 rupees. And the GTX 1660 Super was 8,000 rupees. That brings the total investment to 25,050 rupees. But after selling the rebuilt system for 5,500 rupees, the effective total comes down to 19,550 rupees, which converts to roughly $235 US. And for around $235, this is what we're working with. Now let's see what it can actually do in games. Let's start with Cyberpunk 2077. This was tested at 1080p resolution using high settings with XeSS set to ultra quality. And honestly, the results were better than I expected. We're seeing an average frame rate of around 72 to 73 frames per second, with 1% lows sitting at around 58 frames per second, which for a 1660 Super paired with a 4-core CPU is actually very respectable. Gameplay feels smooth even during busier scenes, and thanks to the undervolt earlier, GPU temperatures stayed well under control throughout the test. Next up is Clair Obscur Expedition 30th3. This was tested at 1080p using optimized settings with XeSS set to Ultra Quality Plus. Now for this test, I specifically chose an endgame area, which is one of the most demanding parts of the game. And as expected, performance does take a hit here. We're seeing an average frame rate of around 40 to 42 frames per second, with 1% lows dipping under 30, and there is some slight stuttering during heavier moments. However, it's important to put this into context. I've actually completed this game on this system, and this endgame section represents the lowest performance I've seen so far. For most of the playthrough, frame rates typically stayed between 45 and 58 frames per second. So while this is definitely the most stressful scenario, overall gameplay is still manageable, especially with XeSS helping smooth things out. Next up is Forza Horizon 5. This was tested at 1080p using ultra settings with textures set to high due to the GPU having 6 GB of VRAM. Anti-aliasing was set to TAA, and honestly, this is where the system starts to feel really comfortable. We're seeing an average frame rate of around 80 frames per second, with 1% lows staying above 60 frames per second. Gameplay feels extremely smooth, even during fast driving sections and denser areas of the map. There's no noticeable stuttering, no instability, and GPU temperatures remain well under control throughout the session. For a build in this price range, this is exactly the kind of performance you want to see. Next up is GTA 5 Enhanced Edition. This was tested at 1080p using maximum settings with FSR set to native anti-aliasing. And once again, the results are very solid. We're seeing an average frame rate of around 83 frames per second, with 1% lows sitting at about 55 frames per second. Gameplay feels extremely stable at native 1080p. There are no noticeable dips that affect playability, and overall it's a very smooth experience. Now, we also have the option of enabling FSR frame generation, which can easily push performance well above 120 frames per second. But for this test, I kept it at native anti-aliasing because honestly, it's already buttery smooth. You're not going to have any issues running GTA 5 Enhanced on this system. And for the final test, we have The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, Next Gen Edition. This was tested at 1080p using Benchmark King optimized settings with XESS set to quality. Also important to mention, this is running on the DirectX 12 version of the game, not DirectX 11. And that does make a difference because while the average performance looks strong, there are some noticeable micro stutters. We're seeing an average frame rate of around 75 frames per second, but 1% lows do dip slightly under 30 frames per second, mainly due to those DirectX 12 stutters. Even so, overall gameplay is still very playable. The higher average frame rate helps keep things feeling responsive, and outside of those occasional dips, the experience is smooth enough to enjoy the game properly. And yes, you can absolutely enjoy your special time with Yennefer in a small hut outside Velen, of course, in silky, smooth frame rates.